The massive space station Nexus Prime floated in the darkness between stars like a silver city. Its metal halls buzzed with nervous energy as alien representatives from 12 different worlds gathered for an emergency meeting. The Galactic Council had not called such a meeting in over 50 years. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Earth defense ship Liberty, watching the stars through the main window. Behind him, 200 human warships moved in perfect formation toward the Kepler 442 system. Each ship carried thousands of tons of weapons, supplies, and soldiers. Jake had been fighting space battles for 15 years, but this mission felt different. This time, the entire galaxy would be watching. "Admiral, we're getting signals from the Galactic Council," said Commander Lisa Brooks, his second in command. "They want us to stop our advance and wait for their decision." Jake turned away from the window. His face was calm, but his eyes were hard. "Tell them we're following the territorial agreements they signed. The Zephyrians have no right to be in that system." On Nexus Prime, the council chamber filled with worried voices. Speaker Veltar of the Altarian people stood at the center of the room. His blue skin looked pale under the bright lights. Around him, representatives from 11 other alien species talked in hushed tones. "The humans are bringing too many ships," said General Dexmore, the Altarian military advisor. 200 warships for a simple border dispute. This is madness. Dr. Lisa Carter, Earth's representative to the council, stood up from her seat. She was a small woman with gray hair and kind eyes, but her voice was strong. "The Zephyrians have been mining our territory for 6 months. They've ignored every diplomatic request to leave. What choice do we have? You could wait for us to mediate," Veltar replied. "Violence should be the last option, not the first," Lisa shook her head. "With respect, Speaker, your mediation has been going on for half a year. Meanwhile, the Zephyrians are stealing resources that belong to human colonies. Our people are suffering." The chamber fell silent. Most of the aliens had never seen humans in combat. Earth had joined the Galactic Council only 15 years ago, and in that time they had been mostly peaceful. But now, watching the displays showing human ship movements, many council members felt afraid. "What do we know about human military capabilities?" asked Councillor Zixith of the Crystalline Collective. His voice sounded like breaking glass. General Dexmore pulled up a holographic display. "They have advanced weapons, but not more advanced than ours. Their ships are well built, but not exceptional. What concerns me is their numbers and their attitude." "Attitude? Your people approach warfare differently than we do," Dexmore explained. "Most species fight to achieve specific goals. Humans seem to fight to win completely." Back on the Liberty, Jake received reports from his fleet commanders. Captain Danny Rodriguez commanded the destroyer group on the left flank. His ship, the UES Defiant, was smaller than Jake's flagship, but carried enough firepower to level a small moon. "Admiral, the Zephyrians are moving ships to defensive positions," Danny reported over the communication system. "They've got about 50 warships and a bunch of mining vessels." "What about their ground forces?" Jake asked. Colonel Amy Patterson's scouts report at least 10,000 Zephyrian soldiers on the main mining planet. They've built defensive bunkers and energy shields around the mining sites. Jake nodded. Colonel Patterson led the first human expeditionary force, 50,000 of Earth's best soldiers. She had been training her troops for this kind of operation for months. Every soldier knew their job, every officer knew the battle plan, and every unit was ready to adapt if things went wrong. "Tell the colonel to prepare for orbital insertion," Jake ordered. "We'll clear the space around the planet first, then send in the Marines." On Nexus Prime, the council members watched the human fleet approach their destination. The sight made many of them uncomfortable. Human ships moved with a precision that seemed almost mechanical, but there was something organic about their formations too. They spread out like a hunting pack, covering all possible escape routes. "They're not just planning to fight," observed Dr. Yethal of the Mentalist Order. "They're planning to win so completely that the Zephyrians will never consider coming back," Lisa tried to explain. Humans have a saying, peace through strength. We don't want to fight. But when we have to fight, we fight to end the conflict permanently. But the cost? Veltar said quietly. So many ships, so many weapons, what if something goes wrong? What if the Zephyrians decide to fight back harder than expected? Then we'll fight harder too, Lisa replied simply. The words sent a chill through the chamber. Most alien species had been peaceful for centuries. They had weapons for defense, but the idea of escalating a conflict instead of backing down was foreign to them. Humans seemed to think differently about violence. In the Kepler 442 system, Zephyrian General Krikstal watched the approaching human fleet with growing alarm. His species had been expanding their territory for decades, usually facing only token resistance from other aliens, but humans were different. They had already proven that in smaller conflicts near Earth. How many ships are they bringing? He asked his aide. Our census count 200 warships plus support vessels, the aide replied. But General, there's something else. They're not just bringing warships. Krikstal's 4 eyes narrowed. What do you mean? Their cargo ships are armed. Their medical vessels have weapons. Even their supply transports are carrying military equipment. It's like their entire fleet is designed for war. The general felt his stomach turn. Most species kept their military and civilian ships separate, but humans seemed to have turned everything into a potential weapon. It was a disturbing thought. Back on the Liberty, Jake gathered his senior officers for a final briefing. The holographic display showed the Kepler 442 system in detail. 3 planets orbited a yellow star, with the Zephyrians concentrated on the second planet. Remember, this isn't just about removing illegal miners, Jake told his officers. The entire galaxy is watching. We need to show them that human territory means something. That when we make agreements, we keep them. And that when others break those agreements, there are consequences. Commander Brooks studied the tactical display. The Zephyrians have good defensive positions. Their ships are grouped around the mining planet and their ground forces are well protected. Which is exactly what we expected, Jake replied. They're thinking like engineers, not soldiers. They're protecting their valuable assets instead of protecting their ability to fight. Captain Rodriguez smiled. That's their first mistake. Colonel Patterson spoke up from her transport ship. My people are ready, Admiral. We've studied Zephyrian tactics and equipment. They're good fighters, but they're not used to human style. Warfare, which is? Asked one of the younger officers. Fast, flexible, and focused on breaking the enemy's will to fight, Patterson explained. We don't just want to win battles. We want to win them so completely that the enemy never wants to fight us again. As the human fleet approached the edge of the Kepler 442 system, alarms began sounding on Nexus Prime. The council members gathered around their displays, watching as 200 human warships prepared to demonstrate why their species had become the galaxy's most effective military force in just 15 years. Dr. Carter stood quietly in the council chamber, knowing that everything was about to change. The aliens thought they understood humans, but they were about to learn something new about the species that had turned warfare into an art form. The battle for Kepler 442 would be more than a territorial dispute. It would be humanity's announcement to the galaxy that Earth's children were not to be trifled with. The storm was about to break. The human fleet entered the Kepler 442 system like a storm rolling across the sky. Admiral Jake Morrison watched from the bridge of the Liberty as his ships spread out into attack formation. Each captain knew their role, each crew knew their duty, and each weapon system was ready for battle. On the second planet below, General Krikstal of the Zephyrian Empire felt his confidence cracking. His scouts had been sending reports for the past hour, and each report made the situation worse. The humans were not fighting like any other species he had encountered. General, you need to see this, his intelligence officer said, bringing up a holographic display. The human cargo ships are not just cargo ships. Krikstal studied the display. What he saw made his blood run cold. The human vessels that should have been carrying supplies were actually mobile weapons platforms. Their cargo holds had been converted into missile launchers. Their hulls were reinforced with armor plating, Even their communication arrays could be used as electronic warfare systems. They turned their supply ships into warships, Krikstal whispered. It gets worse, General. Their medical ships are carrying soldiers. Their transport vessels are loaded with assault vehicles. They have turned their entire fleet into a weapon. On Nexus Prime, the Galactic Council members watch the same intelligence reports with growing horror. Speaker Veltar blue skin had turned almost white. General Lexmore stood frozen at his command console, unable to believe what he was seeing. This is impossible, said Counselor Zixith. No species weaponizes their civilian vessels. It goes against every rule of civilized warfare. Dr. Lisa Carter stood up from her seat. With respect, Counselor, we didn't weaponize them. We built them to be flexible. A human transport ship can carry cargo, passengers, or soldiers depending on what's needed. A human medical vessel can treat wounded, conduct research, or jam enemy communications. We call it adaptive design. You call it terrifying, General. Lexmore said quietly. In space above the mining planet, Colonel Amy Patterson prepared her troops for the coming battle. Her transport ship, the UES Hammer, carried 5,000 of Earth's finest soldiers. But these were not ordinary soldiers. They had been trained for every type of combat imaginable. Listen up, Marines, Patterson announced over the ship's communication system. We're about to show the galaxy what human soldiers can do. The Zephyrians have 10,000 troops on the ground, but they're thinking like miners, not warriors. They've built static defenses around their mining sites. They're protecting their equipment instead of protecting their ability to fight. Sergeant Rick Hayes, leader of the 3rd Assault Squad, checked his weapons one final time. His rifle could fire different types of ammunition depending on the target. His armor could adapt to different environments. His helmet could provide tactical information, night vision, and communication with his squad. But most importantly, his training had taught him to think like a soldier, not just follow orders. What's the plan, Colonel? Asked Lieutenant Katie Walsh, the squad's heavy weapons specialist. We're going to do something the Zephyrians won't expect, Patterson replied. We're going to attack from 6 different directions at once. While they're focused on defending their mining sites, we'll be taking control of their communication centers, their supply depots, and their escape routes. Back on the Liberty, Admiral Morrison received reports from his fleet commanders. The human ships had surrounded the Zephyrian forces, but they were not attacking yet. Instead, they were gathering information. Admiral, we've mapped all their defensive positions, reported Captain Danny Rodriguez from the Defiant. They have energy shields around their main ships, automated turrets on the mining platforms, and fighter squadrons on patrol. Standard defensive doctrine, Morrison replied. They're doing everything by the book. What about their weaknesses? They're treating this like a siege defense, Rodriguez explained. They've grouped their ships close together for mutual protection. They've concentrated their forces around their most valuable assets. And they're using predictable patrol patterns for their fighters, Morrison smiled. In other words, they're fighting like engineers, not soldiers. Exactly. They're trying to protect everything instead of trying to win. On the mining planet's surface, Zephyrian Captain Velkth prepared his ground forces for the coming assault. His troops were well-armed and well-trained, but they had been fighting other alien species for decades. They were not prepared for human tactics. The humans will probably try to land near our main mining facility, Velkth told his officers. We have energy shields and defensive turrets to protect it. Our troops are positioned in bunkers with overlapping fields of fire. They'll take heavy casualties if they try a direct assault. What Velkth didn't know was that Colonel Patterson had no intention of making a direct assault. Her soldiers had been studying Zephyrian tactics for months. They knew how the aliens fought, how they thought, and how they could be defeated. Sergeant Hayes, take your squad and secure the water processing plant, Patterson ordered. Lieutenant Walsh, your team will capture the communication relay. Sergeant Tom Bradley, you'll take the power station. What about the main mining facility? Hayes asked. We'll ignore it, Patterson replied. Let them keep their fancy defenses. Without power, communications, or water, their main facility will be useless. In the council chamber on Nexus Prime, the alien representatives watched the human fleet's movements with growing confusion. The humans were not attacking the Zephyrian ships directly. Instead, they were moving into positions that seemed to serve no tactical purpose. "What are they doing?" asked Dr. Yutha of the Mentalist Order. General Vexmore studied the display screens. "I don't know. Their ship formations don't match any known battle doctrine. They're not concentrating their firepower. They're not targeting the strongest enemy positions. They're spreading out like they're trying to surround the entire system." "Maybe they're preparing to retreat," suggested Counselor Zixith hopefully. Dr. Carter shook her head. "Humans don't retreat from fights they can win. And, Admiral Morrison has never lost a battle." "How can you be so confident?" Veltar asked. "Because I've seen human military planning sessions," Carter replied. "They don't just plan for the battle they expect. They plan for every possible battle that might happen. They have backup plans for their backup plans. And they've been studying the Zephyrians for 6 months." Back in the Kepler 442 system, the battle was about to begin. Admiral Morrison gave the signal, and 200 human warships began their attack. But it was not the kind of attack the aliens expected. Instead of charging directly at the Zephyrian fleet, the human ships began a complex dance through space. Some attacked the enemy's left flank while others hit their right. Some ships fired missiles while others used energy weapons. Some vessels attacked from above while others struck from below. "They're fighting like a pack of wolves," General Crickstall observed with horror. "Each ship is acting independently, but they're all working together toward the same goal." The Zephyrian defenses, designed to stop conventional attacks, were overwhelmed by the human tactics. Their shields could stop direct assaults, but they couldn't handle attacks from multiple directions at once. Their turrets could target individual ships, but they couldn't keep up with the human fleet's constant movement. On the ground, Colonel Patterson's soldiers began their own assault. But instead of attacking the heavily defended mining sites, they struck at targets the Zephyrians had barely bothered to protect. Within minutes, the aliens had lost power to half their facilities and communications to their orbital fleet. "This is impossible," Captain Velk radioed to his commanders. "They're attacking everything except our main defenses." "Because your main defenses are useless without power and communications," Sergeant Hayes replied over the captured communication system. "Welcome to human warfare." In the council chamber, the alien representatives watched the battle unfold with a mixture of fascination and terror. The humans were not just winning. They were demonstrating a completely different approach to warfare. That made traditional alien tactics look primitive. "They're not fighting to destroy the enemy," General Vexmore realized. "They're fighting to control the enemy. They're taking away the Zephyrians' ability to fight back." Dr. Carter nodded. "Human military doctrine is based on the principle that the best battles are the ones where the enemy gives up before they're completely destroyed. We don't want to kill our enemies. We want to make them realize that fighting us is pointless." As the battle continued, it became clear that the humans had already won. They had not just brought superior firepower to the fight. They had brought superior thinking. The Zephyrians were fighting the battle they had prepared for. The humans were fighting the battle they had chosen. The galaxy was learning its first lesson about human warfare. It was not about the size of the fleet or the power of the weapons. It was about understanding the enemy better than they understood themselves, and then using that knowledge to make victory inevitable. The storm had become a hurricane, and the Zephyrians were caught in its eye. The first shot of the battle came from Captain Danny Rodriguez aboard the UES Defiant. His ship fired a single missile at a Zephyrian destroyer, but the missile did not explode on impact. Instead, it released a cloud of metal fragments that spread across space like a deadly fog. "What was that?" General Crickstall demanded from his command ship. "Unknown weapon type," his tactical officer replied. "The missile didn't detonate. It just scattered." Within seconds, they understood. The metal fragments were moving at incredible speed, and they were everywhere. The Zephyrian fighters that had been patrolling the area suddenly found themselves flying through a cloud of shrapnel. Their shields could stop energy weapons and missiles, but they were not designed to handle thousands of tiny metal pieces moving at high velocity. "Brilliant," whispered General Dexmore as he watched the battle from Nexus Prime. "They turned space debris into a weapon." Admiral Morrison smiled as he watched the first phase of his plan unfold. The humans had studied the Zephyrian defensive systems for months. They knew that alien shields were designed to stop big threats, not small ones. So instead of firing massive missiles, they had created weapons that broke apart into thousands of smaller pieces. "Phase 2, Morrison ordered over the fleet communication system. Lieutenant Katie Walsh piloted her fighter squadron through the asteroid field that surrounded the mining planet. Her ship was smaller and more agile than the Zephyrian fighters, but that was not her main advantage. Her advantage was that she could think like a human. "Follow my lead," she told her squadron. "We're going to use the asteroids as cover, but not the way they expect." The Zephyrians had positioned their ships to control the main space lanes between the asteroids. They were guarding the obvious attack routes. But Walsh was not planning to use the obvious routes. She was planning to create new ones. "Fire at the big asteroid on our left," she ordered. Not to destroy it, but to break it apart. Her squadron fired their weapons at the massive rock. The asteroid shattered into dozens of smaller pieces, each piece moving in a different direction. Suddenly, the Zephyrians found themselves facing not one attack route, but 20. "They're using the asteroids as weapons," Captain Velk reported from the planet's surface. "They're not just hiding behind them, they're making them move." On the ground, Colonel Patterson's soldiers were demonstrating another human military principle, combined arms warfare. While Lieutenant Walsh's fighters controlled the space around the planet, Patterson's ground forces were working with them to attack from multiple directions at once. "Sergeant Hayes, what's your status?" Patterson asked over the communication system. "We've secured the water processing plant," Hayes replied. "The Zephyrians tried to retake it, but we had air support from Lieutenant Walsh's squadron. They couldn't get close enough to use their heavy weapons." "Good, Sergeant Bradley. How are you doing at the power station?" "We're in control," Bradley answered. "But the Zephyrians have sent reinforcements. They're trying to surround us." "Not for long," Patterson said. "I'm sending you some help." What happened next amazed the alien observers. Instead of sending more ground troops to help Bradley, Patterson coordinated with the space fleet. Captain Rodriguez's ship moved into position above the power station and began firing at the Zephyrian reinforcements from orbit. "They're fighting like a single organism," Dr. Yethel observed from the council chamber. "Their ground forces, their fighters, and their warships are all working together." Dr. Carter nodded. "We call it combined arms warfare. Every type of unit supports every other type. Ground troops call in airstrikes. Fighter pilots protect ground soldiers. Warships provide cover for both." "But how do they coordinate so well?" Veltar asked. "The communication delays alone should make such coordination impossible." "Human military training," Carter explained. "Every soldier learns how to work with other types of units. Every pilot knows ground tactics. Every ship captain understands infantry operations. They don't just follow orders. They understand the whole battle plan." Back in the Kepler 442 system, the Zephyrian defenses were crumbling. General Kriegstall watched in horror as his carefully planned defensive positions became useless. The humans were not attacking where he expected them to attack. They were not using the weapons he had prepared to defend against. They were fighting a completely different kind of war. "Sir, we're losing contact with our ground forces," his communication officer reported. "The humans have captured most of our communication relays." "What about our orbital defense platforms?" Kriegstall asked. "They're still functional, but they can't target the human ships. The humans are using the asteroid field to block our sensors." "Lieutenant." Tom Bradley led his squad in a desperate fight to hold the power station. The Zephyrians had sent 3 companies of soldiers to retake it, but Bradley was not worried. He had been trained for this kind of situation. Walsh, I need close air support, he radioed to the fighter squadron. On my way, Walsh replied, but I can't get close enough. The Zephyrians have anti-aircraft weapons around your position. Not a problem, Bradley said. Just get me some cover for 30 seconds. What Bradley did next would become a legend in human military history. Instead of waiting for the fighters to destroy the anti-aircraft guns, he used his squad's portable missile launchers to take them out himself, but he did not fire the missiles at the guns. He fired them at the buildings next to the guns. The buildings collapsed, creating clouds of dust and debris that blocked the Zephyrians' line of sight. Walsh's fighters swooped in through the dust cloud and destroyed the anti-aircraft positions before the aliens could react. Improvisation, General Vexmore muttered from Nexus Prime. They're making up new tactics in the middle of the battle. Human. Soldiers are trained to think, not just obey, Dr. Carter explained. Every human fighter pilot is also a tactician. Every human ground soldier is also a strategist. They can adapt to any situation. Admiral Morrison watched the battle unfold with satisfaction. The Zephyrians were good soldiers, but they were fighting according to a fixed plan. When that plan failed, they did not know how to adapt. Humans, on the other hand, had been trained to expect their plans to fail and to create new ones on the spot. Admiral, the Zephyrians are trying to retreat, Captain Rodriguez reported. Their main fleet is moving away from the planet. Let them go, Morrison replied, but make sure they can't come back. What Morrison did next shocked the alien observers. Instead of pursuing the retreating Zephyrian fleet, he had his ships destroy the mining equipment on the planet's surface. The humans were not just winning the battle. They were making sure the Zephyrians had no reason to return. They're not conquering the territory, Counselor Zixith observed. They're making it worthless to their enemies. Smart, General Lexmore admitted reluctantly. If the Zephyrians can't mine the planet, they have no reason to fight for it. On the planet's surface, Colonel Patterson's soldiers were completing their mission with the same efficiency they had shown throughout the battle. They had not just defeated the Zephyrian ground forces. They had captured their equipment, their supplies, and their intelligence files. Colonel, we've secured the main mining facility, Sergeant Hayes reported. The Zephyrians surrendered without a fight once they realized they had no power, no communications, and no orbital support. Good work, Patterson replied. Now let's make sure they understand why they lost. Patterson gathered the captured Zephyrian officers and explained the battle to them. She showed them how the humans had used their own defensive positions against them. She explained how human tactics had turned the Zephyrian strengths into weaknesses. She wanted them to understand that they had not just lost a battle. They had been out hot. Your defenses were excellent, she told General Crickstal. But you were defending against the wrong attack. You prepared for the battle you expected, not the battle we chose to fight. As the battle ended, the human fleet regrouped in orbit around the mining planet. They had achieved total victory in less than 6 hours. The Zephyrian fleet was in retreat, their ground forces were captured, and their mining operations were destroyed, but the real victory was not on the battlefield. It was in the council chamber on Nexus Prime, where 12 alien species had watched humanity demonstrate a level of military sophistication that made their own forces look primitive. They didn't just win, Veltar said quietly. They made winning look easy. Dr. Carter stood up to address the council. The battle is over. The Zephyrians have withdrawn from human territory. The mining operations have been shut down. The territorial dispute is resolved. And the cost? General Lexmore asked. Minimal. Carter replied. Fewer than 100 human casualties. Most of the Zephyrian forces were captured, not killed. Their ships were disabled, not destroyed. We achieved our objectives with the minimum necessary force. The alien representatives sat in stunned silence. They had expected a long, bloody battle between two roughly equal forces. Instead, they had witnessed a masterclass in military efficiency. The humans had not just won. They had won so completely that future conflicts with them seemed pointless. The sound of thunder had passed. leaving only the echo of a lesson the galaxy would never forget, never underestimate the species that had turned warfare into an art form. The silence in the Galactic Council chamber was deafening. For the first time in 50 years, not a single alien representative spoke. They all stared at the holographic displays showing the aftermath of the Kepler 442 battle. 6 hours. The humans had needed only 6 hours to completely defeat a well-prepared enemy force. Speaker Veltar's hands shook as he reviewed the battle reports. The numbers did not make sense. The Zephyrian Empire had lost 50 warships, 10,000 ground troops, and 3 major mining installations. The humans had lost 12 fighters and suffered 93 casualties. It was not a battle, it was a demonstration. How? General Lexmore whispered to himself. He had been studying military tactics for over 200 years, but nothing in his experience had prepared him for what he had just witnessed. Dr. Lisa Carter watched the alien reactions with a mixture of pride and sadness. She had tried to warn them that humans approached warfare differently, but they had not understood. Now they did, and the knowledge terrified them. The Zephyrians were not weak opponents, she said quietly. Their ships were well designed. Their soldiers were well trained. Their defensive positions were expertly planned. They did everything right according to standard galactic military doctrine. Then how did they lose so completely? Asked Dr. Yethel. Because human military doctrine is not standard, Carter replied. On the Bridge of the Liberty, Admiral Morrison reviewed the final battle reports with his senior officers. The mission had been a complete success, but he felt no joy in the victory. He had seen the fear in the eyes of the captured Zephyrian officers, and he knew that same fear was now spreading throughout the galaxy. Admiral, we're receiving surrender broadcasts from all remaining Zephyrian forces in the system, reported Commander Lisa Brooks. They're requesting permission to withdraw their remaining ships and personnel. Granted, Morrison said, but make sure they understand the terms. They are never to return to this system. Any Zephyrian vessel that enters human space will be considered hostile. Sir, don't you think that's a bit harsh? Asked one of the younger officers. Morrison turned to face the officer. Lieutenant, what we did here today was not about territory. It was about sending a message to the entire galaxy. We need to make sure that message is understood clearly. Captain Danny Rodriguez joined the conversation from his ship. The lieutenant has a point, Admiral. We've already proven our superiority. Why make the terms so strict? Because mercy without strength is weakness, Morrison explained. But strength without mercy is cruelty. We need to show the galaxy that we can be both powerful and reasonable. The Zephyrians broke the law, and they paid the price. But we're giving them a chance to leave with their lives and their remaining ships. That's more mercy than most species would show. On the mining planet below, Colonel Amy Patterson walked through the captured Zephyrian facilities with General Crickstall. The alien general had requested a personal meeting to understand how his forces had been defeated so easily. Your soldiers fought bravely, Patterson told him. But bravery alone is not enough in modern warfare. Crickstall looked around at the ruined mining equipment. We prepared for every possible attack scenario. We had contingency plans for orbital bombardment, ground assault, siege warfare, and even biological weapons. How did we miss this? You prepared for attacks, Patterson replied. We prepared for victory. There's a difference. I don't understand. Patterson stopped walking and faced the alien general. Your plans were all defensive. You were thinking about how to stop us from taking your positions. We were thinking about how to make your positions irrelevant. By attacking our infrastructure instead of our defenses. Exactly. You built walls to protect your castle. We poisoned your well. Without power, communications, and supplies, your walls became your prison. Crickstall was quiet for a long moment. This is not how civilized species conduct warfare. Civilized species don't usually need to conduct warfare, Patterson said. But when they do, they should be prepared to win. Back on Nexus Prime, the Council, members were struggling to understand the implications of what they had witnessed. The humans had not just won a battle. They had redefined what victory meant. They captured the Zephyrian command ship without firing a single shot at it, Counselor Zixith said in disbelief. How is that possible? General Dexmore studied the tactical reports. They disabled every other ship in the Zephyrian fleet first. The command ship was left completely isolated. Its crew had a choice: surrender or watch their people die in a hopeless battle. But that level of precision, Dr. Uthel protested. To disable 50 ships without destroying them requires incredible accuracy and restraint. It requires something else too, Veltar said slowly. It requires complete confidence in victory. The humans never doubted they would win. They were so certain of success that they could afford to be precise instead of destructive. Dr. Carter nodded. Human military training includes something called decisive battle doctrine. We don't fight to hurt our enemies. We fight to convince them that continued resistance is pointless. And if they don't surrender? Asked Dexmore. Then we demonstrate why resistance is pointless, Carter replied simply. The words sent a chill through the chamber. Every alien representative suddenly understood that they were dealing with a species that had turned warfare into a science. The humans did not fight with emotion or anger. They fought with cold. Calculating efficiency. Lieutenant Katie Walsh landed her fighter on the Liberty and reported to Admiral Morrison. Her squadron had been instrumental in the victory, using tactics that had never been seen before in Galactic warfare. Excellent work, Lieutenant, Morrison told her. Your asteroid tactics will probably be studied in military academies for decades. Thank you, sir. But I have to ask, was it really necessary to be so overwhelming? Morrison considered the question carefully. Lieutenant, what we did here today was not just about winning a battle. It was about preventing future wars. The galaxy needed to see that human space is protected by people who know how to fight. But now they're all afraid of us. Fear can lead to respect, Morrison said. And respect can lead to peace. The Zephyrians will think twice before violating anyone's territory again. Other species will be more careful about honoring their agreements with us. Sometimes, demonstrating overwhelming force prevents the need to use it again. In the medical bay of the Hammer, human doctors were treating wounded Zephyrian soldiers with the same care they gave to their own troops. This surprised many of the alien prisoners who had expected harsh treatment from their captors. Why are you helping us? Asked a wounded Zephyrian soldier. Because the battle is over, replied Dr. Mike Johnson, the chief medical officer. You're not our enemies anymore. You're just people who need medical attention. The wounded soldier was confused. But we were trying to kill you just hours ago. And we were trying to stop you, Dr. Johnson said while bandaging the alien's arm. But now that's finished. Humans don't hold grudges against defeated enemies. We save our energy for current threats. This attitude puzzled many of the alien observers. Most species either enslaved their defeated enemies or held them as prisoners for years. The humans seemed to treat victory as just another job that needed to be completed efficiently. Sergeant Rick Hayes was documenting the captured Zephyrian equipment when he made a disturbing discovery. Hidden in the mining facility's computer systems were plans for attacks on civilian colonies throughout human space. Colonel Patterson, you need to see this. He called over the communication system. Patterson reviewed the files with growing concern. The Zephyrian mining operation had been a cover for military intelligence gathering. They had been planning a full-scale invasion of human territory. Admiral Morrison, we have a problem, Patterson reported to the fleet commander. This wasn't just a territorial dispute. The Zephyrians were planning an invasion. Morrison studied the intercepted files from his command chair. The evidence was clear. The mining operation had been gathering intelligence on human defenses, shipping routes, and colony locations. If the humans had not acted when they did, they would have faced a much larger war within months. This changes everything, Morrison said quietly. We didn't just stop a border violation. We prevented a war. When this information was shared with the Galactic Council, the alien representatives finally understood the full scope of what had happened. The humans had not overreacted to a minor territorial dispute. They had uncovered and stopped a major military threat before it could develop. How did they know? Veltar asked. They probably didn't, Carter admitted. But human military doctrine assumes that every threat could be part of a larger pattern. We investigate thoroughly and we respond decisively to prevent small problems from becoming big ones. So they treated a mining violation like a potential invasion? And discovered that it actually was a potential invasion. Carter confirmed. The council chamber fell silent again as the alien representatives absorbed this new information. The humans had not just demonstrated superior military tactics. They had demonstrated superior strategic thinking. They had seen threats that other species had missed and acted to prevent conflicts that other species would not have anticipated. 3 days after the battle, the Kepler 442 system was quiet. The human fleet maintained patrol formations while cleanup crews worked to remove the destroyed Zephyrian equipment from the mining planet. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Liberty, preparing for the journey home to Earth. The mission was complete, but he knew the real work was just beginning. Admiral, we're receiving communication requests from 17 different species, reported Commander Lisa Brooks. They all want to establish formal diplomatic relations with Earth. Morrison was not surprised. Word of the battle had spread throughout the galaxy faster than the human ships could travel. Every species with any sense was now eager to be on humanity's good side. Tell them to contact Dr. Carter through normal diplomatic channels, Morrison replied. We're soldiers, not ambassadors. On Nexus Prime, the Galactic Council was meeting in emergency session for the third time in 3 days. The chamber that had once been filled with confident alien leaders now hosted a group of very nervous representatives who were trying to understand their new place in the galaxy. Speaker Veltar called the session to order with hands that still trembled slightly. We need to discuss the implications of recent events. The human demonstration in the Kepler 442 system has changed the balance of power in this region of space. Changed it? General Dexmore laughed bitterly. They didn't change it. They destroyed it. There is no balance anymore. There are the humans, and there is everyone else. Dr. Lisa Carter sat quietly in her designated seat, watching the alien reactions with careful attention. She had expected fear, but the depth of the terror in the chamber surprised even her. The galaxy had not just learned to respect human military power, they had learned to fear it. The question before us, Veltar continued, is how we adapt to this new reality. Do we treat the humans as equals, as superiors, or as a threat to be contained? Contained? Counselor Zixith's voice cracked. Did you see those battle reports? They won a complete victory against a prepared enemy in 6 hours. What could possibly contain them? Alliance? Said Dr. Uthal quietly. We make sure they never have a reason to use that military power against us? Carter finally spoke up. With respect, honored council members, I think you're misunderstanding the human position. We don't want to dominate the galaxy. We want to live in peace, but we've learned that peace requires strength. How can you speak of peace after what we just witnessed? Dixmore demanded. Because what you witnessed was not conquest, Carter replied. It was law enforcement. The Zephyrians violated territorial agreements. They planned an invasion of human space. We stopped them. Now they won't try again, and other species will think carefully before making similar mistakes. Back in the Kepler 442 system, Colonel Amy Patterson was conducting the final interrogation of General Crickstall. The Zephyrian commander had been cooperative, providing detailed information about his empire's military capabilities and strategic plans. Why are you telling us all this? Patterson asked. Your people would consider this treason. Crickstall looked tired and defeated. Because my people need to understand what they're dealing with. If they try to fight humans again, it will be a massacre. At least this way, some of them might survive. We don't want to massacre anyone, Patterson said. We want everyone to follow the rules so we can all live in peace. Peace. Crickstall repeated the word like it was foreign to him. Your species achieves peace by being better at war than everyone else. It's worked for us so far. Lieutenant Katie Walsh was preparing her fighter for the trip back to Earth when she received an unusual communication. It was from a young Altarian pilot who had been monitoring the battle from a nearby system. "Human pilot," the alien voice said. "I watched your asteroid tactics during the battle. Could you teach me how to do that?" Walsh was surprised. "Why would you want to learn human tactics?" "Because they work," the alien replied simply. "And because I think there will be other conflicts in the future. I want to be ready." The conversation made Walsh think about the long-term implications of what they had done. The humans had not just won a battle. They had introduced new concepts of warfare. To the galaxy, other species would study human tactics, try to copy them, and develop countermeasures. The galaxy would never fight the same way again. On Earth, President Sarah Mitchell received Admiral Morrison's final report in her office in Washington. She read through the document twice before setting it down on her desk. The mission had been a complete success, but she knew it came with a price. "How are the other species reacting?" she asked Dr. Carter, who had returned to Earth ahead of the fleet. "Fear, mostly," Carter admitted, "but also respect. 17 species have requested formal alliance treaties. 3 others have offered to share advanced technology in exchange for security guarantees. And the Zephyrians? Their government has formally apologized for the territorial violation and the planned invasion. They've agreed to pay reparations and have offered to surrender 3 star systems as compensation." President Mitchell frowned. "We don't want their territory. We just want them to leave ours alone." I told them that. They didn't believe me at first. The idea that a victorious species wouldn't demand tribute or territory is foreign to most galactic civilizations. "What did you tell them?" "The truth. That human foreign policy is based on mutual respect and fair treatment. We don't want to rule the galaxy. We just want to make sure no one tries to rule us." Admiral Morrison arrived at Earth 3 days later to a hero's welcome. Crowds gathered at the spaceport to see the fleet that had defended human territory so decisively. But Morrison felt uncomfortable with the attention. He had done his job, nothing more. In his report to the military leadership, Morrison was blunt about the implications of the victory. "We've proven that human military doctrine is superior to anything else in the galaxy. But that means we now have a responsibility to use that advantage wisely." "What do you recommend?" asked General Robert Hayes, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. "We expand our military presence in human space, but we don't threaten anyone else's territory. We share some of our defensive technology with allied species, but we keep our offensive capabilities secret. And we make it very clear that we will respond to any threat with overwhelming force." "What about the Galactic Council?" "They're scared of us now." "That's not necessarily bad, but we need to be careful not to let fear turn into hatred. We need to show them that a strong humanity is good for everyone's security." 6 months after the battle, the galaxy had settled into its new reality. The Zephyrian Empire had withdrawn from all disputed territories and was now focusing on internal development rather than external expansion. 3 other aggressive species had also pulled back from their expansion plans, apparently deciding that conquest was no longer profitable. Trade between human space and alien worlds had increased dramatically. Species that had once ignored Earth's requests for diplomatic relations were now eager to establish embassies in human space. The galaxy had learned that being friends with humans was much safer than being their enemies. Dr. Carter addressed the Galactic Council one final time before returning to her new position as Earth's Secretary of Interspecies Relations. "The human position has not changed," she told the assembled representatives. "We seek peaceful coexistence with all species. We respect territorial sovereignty and expect the same respect in return. We will not interfere in the internal affairs of other worlds, and we will not tolerate interference in ours." "And if someone violates these principles?" Veltar asked. "Then we will respond appropriately," Carter replied. "As we did at Kepler 442, the chamber fell silent. Everyone remembered Kepler 442. Everyone would always remember. Kepler-442. As the human delegation prepared to leave Nexus Prime, General Exmoor approached Dr. Carter privately. I have a question that has been bothering me, he said. What is it? Your military performed so well at Kepler 442, but how many ships do humans actually have? How large is your real military? Carter smiled. General, the fleet that fought at Kepler 442 represented less than 5% of human military capacity. Exmore's face went pale. Less than 5%. Earth has 47 inhabited star systems, General. Each one has its own defense. Fleet. The force that defeated the Zephyrians was just one small task force from one sector. As Carter walked away, Exmore stood frozen in the corridor. If the humans could achieve such overwhelming victory with 5% of their forces, what could they do with their full military might? The thought terrified him, but perhaps that was the point. The humans had not conquered the galaxy through force. They had conquered it through the simple demonstration that force was available if needed. They had achieved peace not by eliminating their enemies, but by making it clear that fighting them was a form of suicide. As the human ships departed Nexus Prime for the final time, the galaxy settled into an era of unprecedented peace. Not because war was impossible, but because everyone now understood the cost of challenging the species that had turned warfare into an art form. The age of human hegemony had begun, built not on conquest or oppression, but on the simple understanding that some fights were not worth starting